Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. I hope everybody is having a great week. I've had a little bit of a fiasco day, to be frank with you. I'm still actually in the middle of it as I am recording this show. You remember yesterday, I think I said it yesterday, today was go get my concealed carry permit paperwork filled out. Here in Florida, you have to, I thought you had to make an appointment. As I found out today when I actually got to the office, that you can walk in. It's just that you may have to sit around for a little bit. Had I known that, I would have walked in weeks ago. Just saying. I can also say that when I took the NRA class back in January, they also left me with the impression that if you don't make an appointment, you're not going to be able to get in. Well, I found out that wasn't true when I went up to Clearwater this morning. I should say that here in Florida, at least this area of Florida, the tax offices for each of the counties also do permit applications. However, you have to pay an additional $20 or something like that. Instead of me driving the whole way over to Tampa, where the agriculture department for Florida is, which is the department in Florida that handles that. So the tax office for Pinellas County is a lot closer. It's 25 minutes away, but you should know that's only 11 miles. So yes, to get there, I actually average under 30 miles an hour. So many stoplights. It's crazy. So I had my appointment at 9 a.m. this morning. I show up right on time, first person in the office. Could have got in, got out, nobody gets hurt. Here I forget my NRA certificate. Yeah, that's very unusual for me to do. Very unusual. And it was right on the paperwork that I had to bring that. So I had to drive the whole way back home, so that's 25 minutes up there. I get back to my place around 9:30 in the morning, get the paper. Of course, I'm not within my apartment more than 30 seconds. Jump back in the car, drive up there for 10 o'clock. Have to wait around a little bit because now there's other people with appointments there, and there are people walking in like me, but they told me, hey, we'll put you in as soon as we can, being that you had an appointment at 9 a.m. No problem. So they got me in fairly quickly. Go to the computer, fill out all the paperwork, go over, fill out the check, sign it, give it to the woman there, go over, get all my fingerprinting done. And they tell me that's done. It was real weird. The woman who did my fingerprinting was from Ely, Nevada. And as you know, I lived in Nevada for over 13 years. So we had a little talk about Las Vegas. So I leave thinking everything's fine. Get home, sitting here not more than 5 minutes after I walked in the door. So that would have been, I'm going to say, around 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Yeah, somewhere around there. I get a call from the office. I see it's a 727 number, Pinellas County. I said, well, I'll pick this up. I usually don't pick the phone up. And it's the office. Here, they forgot to take my picture. So I have to go back up there to the office. And granted, the reason is because they were so busy. Had some walk-ins, had me who blew his appointment because of not having the proper paperwork. And they never took my picture. So I have to go up there before 4:30 today and get my picture taken. So my application for my concealed carry permit is still not done. So I thought you might like to hear that. Now the good news is I have to go up that direction tonight anyway because my writers group is up in that general area. So it's not as bad as it sounds, but still. Wow, a lot of work to get this done. As one of my friends said online, is this some sort of sign or something? I said, only a sign that, if you have an appointment at 9 o'clock, make sure that you bring the right paperwork. So I think had I brought the right paperwork at 9 a.m., that I would have gotten it all done and the picture would have been taken. However, I think I threw a little bit of a wrench into their methods and the little flow they had going on, and they were nice enough to take me, don't get me wrong. But next time I'll know, well, there isn't going to be a next time because now I have it now, that you don't need an appointment. Now, the funny part about this, and we're going to get to politics, don't worry. I'm giving you insight into my life. We're going to get to the politics, what's going on, and, we got some primaries tonight. We'll get to that. Don't worry. I always start out the beginning of the show with something personal going on in my life. When did I become a Glock salesman? Been talking a lot about guns the last 4 months, especially since the Paris attack, and I told you that was my big aha moment. Said, you know what, maybe, Ed, maybe you should get a gun. And, that, and then there was San Bernardino, and then the people say, the things that people say to you on Twitter, and the trolling you get from doing the show, and the emails you get from doing the show. You might want to think about arming yourself. So, as you know, I've been watching a lot of gun stuff. And I went and got a Glock 19 that is going to be my concealed carry weapon. So I'm sitting in there the second time I got up there, and there was a guy sitting across in the lobby from me, and he was in there to get his concealed carry permit as well. We start talking guns. And he tells me he has a Ruger, and already I start selling him on the Glocks. I said, have you ever shot a Glock? No, I'm familiar with them, but never shot one. Oh, man, you got to get rid of that Ruger. That thing, no. My dad had a Ruger. He shot my gun and got rid of his, which that's a true story. I told you that story. We went to the gun range. My dad had his LC9. I had my Glock 19. He couldn't hit the bullseye at 20 feet with his gun. Couldn't even come close to it. He takes my gun. 3 out of the next 8 shots, he hits in the red at 20 feet. So I'd say a diameter of a circle of about 3 inches, I'm going to say. Hits it at 20 feet with my gun. Never had fired a Glock before. Don't know if he'd even fired a gun like a Glock ever before, but because that LC9 is nothing like it's a little tiny. It's a 9mm, but that's about the only similarity to my gun. Long trigger, hard slide to pull back. Can't get your full hand on it. More kick than my gun has. And then he just hits the heck out of the bullseye with my gun. So I'm telling this guy, and he said he has the exact same gun. And I said, oh, no. You got to try out the Glock. He goes, oh, okay. I'm thinking to myself as I'm telling him all this, Ed, when did you become a Glock salesman? They're not paying you to advertise for them. They're not paying you to talk about them on the show. But as you know, my gun experience is not a lot. My gun experience started in January. But all I know is for any of you who are new people or thinking about it, now for you people who are experienced, very experienced, I'm going to guess you fired a Glock at one time. They either love it or hate it. I suppose it's one of those things. But for you new people thinking about it, that's the gun I would check out. It really is. In talking to this guy and comparing his experience with his gun to just the small experience I have with mine, let's put it this way. I had a lot nicer things to say about mine than he did about his. And it's like I said, all it took for my dad was for my dad to shoot my gun about 20 times. And he said, I'm getting rid of mine. Okay. And of course, he still hasn't yet. I think he'll get one once he goes back to Pennsylvania. But it was just kind of funny. It's always interesting to talk to another gun owner now for me and see what they're shooting and see what they're carrying and see what their experiences have been. So I was selling he goes, what is that? That's like what size gun is that? That's like the compact size, like the mid-level size for the 9mm in Glock. But a lot of people can still carry it. I'm giving them all the specifics on, once again, am I a Glock salesman? No. They're not paying to advertise on this show. I should just keep my mouth shut. All right, I'm done with the personal stuff. Let's get to the show. We got some primaries tonight. By the time you listen to this, I'm guessing that you'll know the results in at least Michigan and Mississippi. I obviously, as you know, my political predictions are not very good. I know my conservatism very well. I can argue conservatism for the rest of my life, and I know that I'm right in that. But making these political predictions with any of the candidates, including Donald Trump or my favorite guy, the guy I prefer, Ted Cruz, is very tough. Especially since, as I made the point yesterday and the point last week, they tend to lose and win states you wouldn't normally think that they would win and lose. Now, how Donald Trump wins, blows out the field in New Hampshire, but then he gets blown out in Maine, I don't know how that works. And I'm not saying New Hampshire and Maine should just be the same state. But we know that part of the country tends to think a lot in the same way. I mean, there's a reason there are very, very few Republican congressmen from the Northeast. There's a reason. There's a reason. Not essentially in Pennsylvania, but New York and New Jersey and Northeast from there. Now, we know we have some Republican governors like LePage in Maine. Well, he endorsed Trump and Cruz wins. I don't know how you figure that out. Maybe Michael Barone can do that. And Charles Cook, not C.W. Cook from National Review, but that other guy, the poll guy, the political science guy, can explain that. Maybe Larry Sabato can explain that from the University of Virginia. Ed Dentzel can't explain that. I'm going to have to do a little bit more reading to understand that. And then going into the into the South, where Cruz with his religious speeches that he gives, you'd think that would do well in some of those states. Hasn't, but he'll do well in Iowa, Kansas, and Oklahoma, and of course Texas. But we know that he's from Texas, so maybe he has a little advantage there. But those other states, Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa, wins all those ones fairly easily. But then loses, or he ties, but technically loses in Louisiana. And loses in Kentucky. But he can win in Maine, but lose in New Hampshire. I don't know how you figure all that out. However, I'll give it a shot. It's my show, right? I can say anything I want in this show as long as I don't offend the FCC, being that Red State Talk Radio is played on some terrestrial radio stations out there. Hawaii, Idaho, Michigan, and Mississippi. Man, I gotta believe that Cruz wins Idaho. I gotta believe that. Conservative Idaho, don't let me down. However, with the other two, you gotta believe that Trump is going to win Michigan. And given that Trump won Louisiana, although barely, and then he won Georgia and South Carolina, common sense, the conventional wisdom would be that he's going to win Mississippi as well. However, on the other hand, Ted Cruz got the endorsement of the governor of Mississippi. So, of course, that didn't do anything for Donald Trump in Maine. So I don't know how you put this all together. The problem Cruz is going to have, and Rubio in Michigan, is that it just seems to me I just don't know that it's conservative enough of a state, even though the governor is Republican, but we know all that stuff that's going on with Flint, Michigan that I really haven't talked about. But on the other hand, I would have thought that Cruz would get blown out in Maine. So who knows? Who knows? And then there's Hawaii, which for most of the United States, we're not going to know what happens there until tomorrow. Could be a contest there. Could be. I was reading a funny story. Hawaii has a Senate. There are 25 senators, state senators, the state Senate of Hawaii. There's 25 members in it. 24 of them are Democrats. And that's from a state that not long ago had a Republican governor, that Linda Lingle or something like Linda something. They had a Republican governor, but at the state level in that Senate there, they have one Republican, and that one Republican, I don't know how conservative, I don't know where he is on the political map, but he has come out and endorsed Ted Cruz. Will that go anywhere? I don't know. It would seem to me that Donald Trump would win there too. But once again, I'm not a political scientist. I'm a conservative. I'm more of an economist than a political scientist. So we'll see. Now, there's another point to this. And where I want to go later with this, I have some quotes from Rush. I've been doing that a lot lately. It's weird. And then I have a little article that I meant to get to last week from National Review. And then I have some Bill O'Reilly, Dennis Miller video. Just a couple old things that I haven't got to because of everything that's going on. But a lot has been made about this idea of a brokered convention. And, of course, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And I am not sure I understand all of it. I know that a certain candidate, one of the candidates has to get to 1,237 delegates. If they don't get to that, then you go to the convention, and then maybe one of the other guys sends their delegates, let's just say, to Trump, and it doesn't get on the first ballot, but on the second ballot, the delegates are free to go for whoever they want, and then maybe some of them will go to Donald Trump, and that's how he will get it. And then there will be some political wrangling to keep those delegates from going for Donald Trump or one of the other candidates. And then a brokered convention. Well, we just can't get to any of these guys who actually toughed this all out. We can't agree on that, so maybe there's someone else, and then Mitt Romney's name pops up. Paul Ryan's name pops up. Now, the weird thing about this, and just when you think you know a lot about United States history, and essentially, specifically the presidency, I ran across this story from James Garfield, who won the election in 1880. Well, he didn't even start out that campaign season as a candidate. He was a campaign manager for somebody else. And back, once again, 1880, and if you'll remember, eventually James Garfield was assassinated. He was assassinated by a guy who wanted a government job and didn't get it. To put it in 21st century terms, that's how I would explain it. And he was upset that Garfield won, and he thought that by killing Garfield, then this other guy, of course another Republican, but kind of a different kind of Republican, would get in there, and then all these people would get these government jobs. That's the best way to explain it. But in any case, they went to the convention in 1880, the Republicans, and they couldn't agree on anybody either. And one guy kept voting for, the one delegate kept voting for James Garfield. Started out by himself. Eventually, he pulled everybody to his side against Garfield's own, desires. Garfield had no desire to be president, but then tried to stop all of this, and still all these delegates flipped over, voted for Garfield. That's how he got the nomination, and then that's how he ended up becoming the Republican nominee and winning. After all that, started out as a campaign manager and then became president of the United States. And about the time that he got shot, I'm sure he wishes he never got into politics at all. So, it's been a while, and I'm sure that the rules regarding all of this has changed since 1880. Of course, technology has changed, and the United States is a lot bigger, and all of that. So a lot of that has changed. So it can get though, at least one point in United States history, it did get pretty crazy. Now, getting back to this convention this year that's going to take place in Cleveland, Ohio, there's something that I haven't read about, but it has been on my mind. I've told you that I think that Donald Trump is very much like Barack Obama. And Barack Obama has kind of gone, at least in his popularity, the way that I thought, that he was a little bit of a fad after he got elected. Now, I know he got reelected in 2012, but with 5 million less votes, which, to my knowledge, was a first in American history of a president getting a second term, but getting less votes the second time around. A little bit of a fad, a little bit like the hula hoop, a little bit like the pet rock. The difference is with Barack Obama is that he was the first, if you want to call him black man, even though he's half white. There's that about him that kept his popularity up. And we know in the black community in the United States, he's still very popular. And in many white communities, he's still very popular. And because of what he's done, but also there are still many white people out there who voted for him just because he was black. Okay? Donald Trump is different in that he is just another old white guy. And he is like pretty much every other president that's ever been elected, except for Barack Obama, except for maybe Bill Clinton, because he was kind of a young guy when he was elected. JFK, who was also young when he got elected. Teddy Roosevelt, when he became president, he was somewhat young. The rest of them, been kind of old guys. Maybe Jimmy Carter was a little younger, but pretty much old white guys. So there's that. He's like Barack Obama in that I think, of course, they have similar personalities, I believe. Their politics are probably closer than the Trump supporters want to admit. Have kind of the same personalities. I even saw that in every one? I saw this story about how in the Donald Trump campaign offices that there is a golden bust of him. Somebody took a picture. Is that a joke? Is that just one place, or is that in every office, or most of them? I read it, and I wasn't sure. Is this some sort of joke? Is this something put out by an anti-Trump group? Or maybe it was a pro-Trump group. Maybe they see something good in that. I don't know, but you can look for that yourself online. But what I'm saying is that Donald Trump is not going to have, I think, the carryover as much as Barack Obama did, given that I think that they are both fads. And the reason I'm saying Donald Trump is a fad is we've already seen his popularity diminish. Now, a lot of that is because finally the other candidates are giving him a hard time. I told you for a long time I thought it was best to just let Donald Trump go off on his own. But I said that once the real football with pads comes and when the voting starts, you got to start hitting them hard. But it just took these guys a little longer than I would have liked. I can understand them staying away from him for a few months. But once the real season begins, you got to treat him like anybody else. But we're already seeing that fade. And granted, he may stick it out. He may be popular enough to end up getting the 1,237 delegates before these primaries and caucuses are over. I don't even know which state is even last. Does this go, I think, through April? Does it go into May? I haven't looked at the schedule, but at least into April, at least. But I'm wondering about that time between if he were to get the nomination, get enough delegates, and the convention, which surely doesn't start until August, right? It's in August sometime, right? Like I said, I'm sorry, I've not looked these dates up, but I'm just remembering from the past that these conventions usually take place in August or early September. So there's quite a bit of time between a candidate getting enough delegates and the convention. And we know what goes on in that time. The candidate continues to campaign. The party kind of comes together. The person who's going to be presumably the nominee, picks out a vets different vice presidential possibilities. There are things that go on. But I have a question, being that I think I know what's going on here. What if Donald Trump, by the time the convention comes around, just isn't that popular? Now, I know that right now, of all the people that have voted, there's probably like a hardcore 30% of people who will vote for him, and there's 70% who want nothing to do with them. Now, I realize that's going to change once he gets to that delegate count. My belief is that, yes, his percentage of Republicans that are happy with him will increase. Nothing can do about that. I doubt it's going to get over 50%, though. I doubt it. But it'll definitely rise from the average percentage he has been getting in these states, which is somewhere, around 30%, 32%. It's going to go way up from that. However, I don't know if that number will sustain itself, because that is a long time to listen to one guy say the same things over and over, because Donald Trump is kind of a one-trick pony, kind of a one-note guy. And I'm wondering what happens with these delegates and the party once he gets to August, and even maybe some of his supporters start to kind of wane, because, like I said, my belief is that Donald Trump, among every other thing that I could say about him, I think he's a little bit of a fad. Right? It's like fluorescent colors in the 80s. Or wearing plaid long shirts in the early to mid 90s. Or bell bottoms. They kind of were in the 70s, and then they came back in the 2000s. And I remember working at Star Trek The Experience from about 2000 to 2004. Girls were showing their thongs above their jeans. Remember that? I think Donald Trump's a little bit like that. Likewise, I've thought Barack Obama is a little bit like that. The difference is that he has a little bit more staying power for the reasons that I stated when I started this topic. Donald Trump doesn't have that. Doesn't have it. He's just, in the end, an old, rich, and even that's questionable, white guy. And he's a little bit popular now because people have drummed up a lot of attention for him, a lot of energy for him. Of course, the word anger has been used. But you know that anger only lasts for so long. All right? Anger. Being ticked off. It only lasts for so long. And we know that in our personal lives. People we have been angry at, eventually, maybe some of us get over it. Some of us forget about it. Time heals all wounds. And it may be once these people get what they want and get Trump to enough delegates, are they going to stay engaged? I don't know. You add on top of the fact that my belief is that a lot of Democrats and independents have been crossing over and voting for Donald Trump. Whether they're trying to screw our process up, the Republican process up, or they really do feel that Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders aren't good enough, I'm just not sure regarding all of that. Once again, are they voting for Donald Trump just because they saw him on TV and they could say they could vote for that guy? Well, those types of things, I'm not sure that they last. I'm not so sure. Whereas I don't think that, for example, Ted Cruz is a fad. He's been in politics for a while, different positions. Is a student of politics, a student of conservatism, right? Has fought a lot of battles, You know that what he's doing is really what he wants to do with his life. Say what you want about politicians in general. Donald Trump, not so sure about that. And so that has begun to rattle around in my mind. And I got to go to the break. I want to continue after the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Red State Talk Radio. Lock it in and rip the knob off.
I know you're watching, so pay attention. You hate my freedom, my religion, and my country. You hate me for speaking my mind. You try to control me with violence and intimidation. You think you can muzzle me with fear? Don't ever confuse me for my politicians or my media. I am an American, free-born and free-bred, and I will call you out for who you are. An Islamic extremist who would kill me for my beliefs. You don't intimidate me. My freedom is more powerful than anything you can possibly do, and I will never, never surrender my rights to your terror. I will say what I think, worship according to my beliefs, and raise my children how I see fit, and I defend it all with the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I cower to no one, because I am the National Rifle Association of America, and I am freedom's safest place.
This is Donna Fiducia. For 26 years, I was a member of the mainstream media, most recently as an anchor at the Fox News Channel. Ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has failed you miserably. Red State Talk Radio will not fail you. Tune into Red State Talk Radio at redstatetalkradio.com, the dominant force in conservative Internet talk radio.
I lost my brother Frank in the Battle of Iwo Jima.
He served on 4 combat tours
in Vietnam,
in Iraq,
Afghanistan.
There's a life that was lost behind that pin.
I put it on for my wife,
For my husband,
my brother,
my dad.
My son.
we wear it because we honor those that we lost.
To learn more about the stories behind the Gold Star Pins, visit goldstarpins.org.
This is Jeff Carlisi from the Band 38 Special. You're listening to Red State Talk Radio. Lock it in and rip the knob off.
We are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue to talk about Donald Trump and should he get enough delegates to become the nominee and that period between him getting those delegates and the convention. In the break, I was thinking about it this way. This is kind of like, you know, as a writer, as a fiction writer, the popular idea, if you really want to be a good writer, is to stay away from fads, to stay away from things that are popular right now. A while ago would have been dinosaurs, or dinosaurs, or vampires or werewolves and zombies and all these things. And you're not supposed to follow that, because by the time you start writing a story about zombies in 2016, by the time you finish it, by the time it gets edited, and then by the time you find a literary agent, if you can find one, by the time all additional edits are done, and by the time a cover is picked out and it makes it anywhere through a real publisher, onto Amazon, anywhere, it may be 2020 before that happens. And who knows what's going to be popular then? Right? Yeah, The Walking Dead's on TV, but who knows what's going to be popular 4 years from now. So what that should tell you as an artist, in this particular case a writer, is you just have to write the stories, create the stories, and I guess this could even go to painting or sculpture or music or anything else. You just have to do those things that you like. What do you like to write about? What do you like to paint? What kind of films do you like? What kind of music do you like? What really moves you? And just devote your time to that. Donald Trump feels like a fad. It feels like something that is trying to be cool now. And those types of things wear out. They just do. Even for Barack Obama, they just kind of do. Even though it may be this time around, if Barack Obama were to be able to run for a third term, would he win? You have to believe he'd get less votes than he even got in 2012. Well, he starts getting any lower, it starts becoming a competition. So even with him, as popular as he was with Democrats, even his, people being energetic for him has kind of worn out. He's come back down to earth. And we know that Barack Obama took over the Democrat Party way more than Donald Trump has taken over the Republicans. As much as you want to say about this wave of Donald Trump and all these people showing up for him, it's nothing compared to Barack Obama in 2008. It's not even close. Okay? It's not even close. Now, maybe a little bit has to do with Barack Obama only having one opponent, and that was Hillary Clinton. But we know what would happen in a situation if it were Donald Trump against one other candidate who was liked by a lot of Republicans. Donald Trump would be getting his butt kicked. So his popularity is nowhere close to Barack Obama's, and we know how far Barack Obama's fallen. How far do you think Donald Trump is going to fall, and how fast do you think that's going to happen? Especially considering all of these different groups that think that he's going to do what they want, and those groups have competing interests. It very well could be that we have a candidate who gets enough delegates in April. By the time August rolls around, everybody's worn out from him, even his own supporters. Because you have to remember something. A lot of his support is from new people, allegedly. As far as they can tell, a lot of new people allegedly interested in Donald Trump. Well, what that tells me is those people really don't know how the process works and how drawn out it is. Whereas I think that the supporters of the other candidates, whether it be Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, John Kasich, even the guys who've dropped out, women who've dropped out, I think their supporters were more seasoned voters, more familiar with the political process, how these primaries and caucuses work, and they understand that this is a marathon, not a sprint. I'm wondering if Donald Trump people know that. Especially if you're going to buy into the idea of anger. How long can you stay angry? How long? Some people, that varies. It all depends on the situation. September 11th, people can stay angry for a long time. Somebody whipping you the finger in traffic, I guess it's going to be a lot lesser time. Maybe a couple minutes. Somebody cutting you off, you're going to be angry. Hopefully you get over it. Hopefully you don't follow that person and create a road rage incident. It all depends on the situation. So it's going to be interesting because everybody's talking about the establishment. They're going to do this and they're going to do that and they're going to maneuver it this way. And I guess that's possible. I'm much more worried about the guy who is technically the front runner being a has-been by August. I'm much more worried about that. And as I told you, I'm not even going to vote for him anyway. So you can't even count me into the statistics regarding him and getting bored with him over time. I've been bored with Donald Trump for about 15 years. And I just don't know how many more people. I know there are going to be a lot of people like this friend that I was talking about. There are going to be a lot of people like my dad and my mother who don't like Donald Trump. But if it's him against Hillary Clinton, they're going to show up and vote for Donald Trump. So he's going to get some people to show up. A lot of people are going to do that. And a lot of people who are never Trump people are going to eventually change their minds. And if he's the nominee, they will go vote for him. I'm more worried about all those people who got him to the nomination in the first place. Are they going to stick around? Are they going to stick around once they figure out that maybe they aren't going to get what they thought? And once again, I say it again, we've already seen a huge decrease in Donald Trump's national poll numbers. He's the only candidate that could get the nomination, and his poll numbers are going the wrong way. At least with Mitt Romney, John McCain, George W. Bush, and those before him, as the primary went on, their numbers increased. It could be for Donald Trump, they go the opposite direction. So that is a problem. That's going to be a big problem. That's why, exactly another reason, once again, and this isn't mentioned anywhere, but that's another reason people worry about what's going to happen down tickets. For Republicans who are running from the Senate, maybe to a little lesser extent, the Republicans who are running for the House. When you have a person at the top of the ticket who isn't fashionable in November, he was actually fashionable this past February. I don't know. It should be a concern, though. Just wanted to talk about that, and we'll see. We'll see what happens tonight. We'll see. Next week, I finally get to vote. I'm not doing any early voting. Maybe I'll go talk about Florida later in the week as we get closer to Florida. For now, we got Hawaii, Idaho, Michigan, and Mississippi. We'll see what happens. We'll see if this trend continues of Trump maybe still winning, but getting a smaller percentage of the vote. Or will his numbers start to go back up, or is he just going to completely crash? No. We'll see. Let's move on to something else. I've talked to you once in a while. I'm a huge Dennis Miller fan. When he had his show, it was one of the few shows that I continued to listen to once I started doing this show regularly, and that kind of started before I got on Red State Talk Radio. Maybe it's because Dennis Miller is a Pittsburgh guy. He's from Pittsburgh. I'm from the Pittsburgh area. Maybe because I do like his brand of humor. He's somewhat conservative, but we know he's for gay marriage, and he's for some other things that I'm not for, but always enjoyed his show. And I don't like Bill O'Reilly, so how those two get along is interesting to me, because I really prefer one and don't like the other. But we know that they do those shows. Are they still doing those shows? I forget what they're called, but I know they both show up. And are they both on stage? I don't even know what they do, to be honest with you. But I don't watch Bill O'Reilly at all. If my dad turns it on, I ignore it when I've been over there the last 2 months. When I go back to Pennsylvania, my dad turns it on. I leave the room. I can't stand the guy. But I have watched Bill O'Reilly or I watched a videotape of it when Dennis Miller is on, and I think that's every Wednesday, Miller time. And this past Wednesday, of course, it would be 6 days ago now. I'm sorry to getting to this a little late. But I now see why Dennis Miller got out of, he didn't re-up his contract. When was it? A year ago? seems like it was a year ago, maybe it was longer than that ago, that he did not re-up and he just doesn't do anything anymore. I'm going to guess that hit him in the pocketbook at least a little bit, but he doesn't seem to care. Hey, his life. But I now see why he kind of left the arena of hosting a show, and we know that would be as many stations that he had. A lot of people would love to have the coverage that he did. He made the point, Dennis Miller said about Donald Trump, well, at least he's making the right enemies. And see, when I hear something like that, I think, yep, I think that I'm over Dennis Miller as a political commentator. Well, Dennis, I listened to you for 4 years, 5 years. And I guess I'm not a Trump supporter. I guess that he's making the right enemies. I guess you mean me. Do you mean me? I guess you could say, yes, Donald Trump has made me his enemy because of the things he does, the things he says, his history as a person, his life, his character. Yes, he has made me an enemy. And it would be weird for you to say, Dennis Miller, that that's a good thing, that you think that Donald Trump is a better person than I am. Making the right enemies, Dennis Miller said. That passed for competent conversation last week on Bill O'Reilly's show. Now, maybe I'm taking that a little personal. But that's just kind of a stupid statement. Making the right enemies. You mean Ted Cruz, the guy who shut down the government? Is that who you mean? All these regular conservatives out here who are saying never Trump, you mean it's good that they're on the opposite side, really? To continue that conversation, Bill O'Reilly, and this is why I've told all of you he's a hack. I've tried to convince from my dad, for example, that he shouldn't watch him. Even though my dad is a member at the Bill O'Reilly site and has read most of his books, including Killing Reagan, which I don't even go into that. Bill O'Reilly says, these people don't understand that, hey, Donald Trump, he's a regular person. I mean, you see him at those games when he goes to the sport games, he's not eating caviar or anything. He's just eating hot dogs like the rest of us. You know what that sounds like to me? Being that I talked about Barack Obama and the comparison to Donald Trump earlier in the show, that sounds to me like that reporter who was doing that interview with Barack Obama, and he said, I really liked that crease in his pants, remember? And I knew that he was, a serious person or whatever he said. As if that means anything. Bill O'Reilly says, yeah, he was a shortstop, he played baseball. Oh, well, of course that's what matters. And then you wonder why Donald Trump doesn't get any tough interviews on Fox News except for Megyn Kelly. But Megyn Kelly, for some reason, is now the most hated person on that station. I don't get it. While the rest of these guys, and I guess there's some women on there too, are just giving Donald Trump a total pass by saying, well, he's a good guy because he eats hot dogs and played shortstop in baseball. It's crazy. It is absolutely insane. It's just as stupid as the people who watch Ted Cruz and say, it kind of reminds me of a televangelist. I mean, I can joke about that. Doesn't bother me at all. But there are people who won't vote for him because of that. Doesn't matter what his history is. So it's just so hard to figure out the double standards that go around. As you know, I don't care what a candidate eats. I don't care what their favorite sports are. I don't care. I only care about the political positions. And that's where a lot of conservative media, or people who think that they have say in the conservative media, like Bill O'Reilly, he's no conservative. They have misled all of you. And dare I say it, they misled me for a while as well. I don't allow them to do that anymore. So I was really disgusted. I was really disgusted with that conversation of last week regarding Dennis Miller. I think Dennis Miller's just had it. He's just given up. I think he's just full of it. And then he made, of course, that was the night before Mitt Romney made that speech. He made fun of Mitt Romney, even though he's went out to support him. Just a fiasco. A lot of people showing their true colors these days, I got to tell you. That's why these adverse situations will show all of you who the real people are, the truthful people are, and the people who've been just trying to get you to listen to them so they can sell you stuff. That's what we've been seeing over the last 6 months. Now, having said that, I'm going to go to this article. It was from the Daily Caller, and it was Rush Limbaugh said some things. I put out a tweet. It must have been not this past weekend, but last week, the beginning of last week, maybe even a week and a half ago, that past weekend, about I read something or saw a video from Rush, and there was just something. There was like this knee-jerk reaction. I said, Rush is starting to become that guy who's not going to know when to retire. He's just starting to sound like that. Just some of those comments that he's just throwing out there, that it just sounds like, like Wile E. Coyote on the cliff, and he walks out and he's standing there in midair and he just thinks he's so smart, and then he looks down. This is kind of the way I feel about Rush these days. And like I said, I don't even listen to him. I just catch these transcripts and videos. But he said Trump is the only possibility of wresting control of the country back from the upper class. First of all, do we really believe that it's... I know a lot of people who are hoity-toity Republicans who are not rich. I knew plenty of them in Las Vegas who would toe the line for that moderate, milquetoast, rhino Republican. People drove Toyotas and Hondas. All right? So it's not like a bunch of rich people are in control of the party. It's just who's in control of the party are some people who aren't conservative. So that's wrong just to start this. But I want to go back down. I want to go down. There's a whole thing, but I'm going to run out of time. He said, at the root of this misunderstanding regarding this and regarding the personality cult that surrounds Trump, and do not doubt me on this, is the arrogant condescension that the ruling class for average or ordinary Americans. That's the root of this misunderstanding. Not hard to understand when explained to you. We hear terms like flyover country thrown around, but after a while, the people that live in flyover country, they begin to understand what it really means. Well, it's funny, Rush, being that we have primaries today, and you think that the people in the flyover country are so ticked off. Well, you know what? Flyover country, that's like what? Nebraska, Iowa, let me see, Kansas, Oklahoma. Well, you know who's won? Well, I know Nebraska hasn't had that, but those three other states, guess who's won in those states, Rush? Ted Cruz has. Donald Trump hasn't smelled a win in flyover areas yet. Where does he win? He won in some states I'm surprised by, but they're certainly not flyover country. So what you're saying isn't even correct. Not even geographically. That's why I think it just starting to sound to me like it's time. I think it's just time to move on. Something that's so easily I can demonstrate to you that is so wrong. Donald Trump isn't winning flyover country, Rush. So those people, they're all ticked off. They may be ticked off in flyover country, but they're going for Ted Cruz. That should tell you something if you want to pay attention to it. But I got to go. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. You can go to edwarddentzel.com where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find those shows the day after they appear on Red State Talk Radio. You can find them at YouTube, Podomatic, Podbean, SoundCloud. You go to edwarddentzel.com/book, where you can find my first chapter of my next book, The Comebacks. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. You're listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.